Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Inon very much for sponsoring this episode, or Inon possibly for our friends across the other side of the Atlantic. Inon provide a huge variety of underwater photography equipment, but possibly most noticeably their strobes and lighting products. And they've also just released new housing, so please head on over to check them out at inon.jp. That's obviously for Japan. So thanks very much, Dinon. And today's episode is really been inspired by one of the participants for this year, 2022, Wetpixel Under the Jungle Cenote photography workshop, and the participant was querying about lens choices, and I thought it would be a useful thing to introduce some ideas about lens choices in very dark environments. And obviously in this case we're talking about cave cenote type photography, where ambient light is very limited, but this is obviously equally applicable to environments where you've got less ambient light, so certainly shipwreck photography, possibly certainly in shipwreck interior photography, and possibly even environments where you're managing to shoot large scene wide angles, so you've got plenty of good visibility, but what you don't have is you don't have much light. And so what I thought a good place to start with this really is to try and go back to basics. And there's a relationship, obviously, in terms of exposure between, broadly speaking, four characteristics. And the first one is quite simply the amount of ambient light available. So this obviously refers to the amount of light that you have. And in that as well, I'm going to lump in the amount of light that you bring with you. So obviously, one of the first things you can do is you can introduce more light into a scene by using bigger, more powerful strobes, more powerful lights. So two things. First of all, ambient light, so the amount of ambient light that's available, which obviously typically in a cavern or cenote environment is likely to be limited, but it depends on where you are in the cavern or cenote. And then on top of that, you've obviously got the lights that you bring with you, and as I say, those can be frequently cenote photography is done using continuous light. It can be used by using strobes, it can be used by using off-camera strobes. But obviously, as you increase the amount of light that you put into the scene, that affects your exposure. And so that's part one. I'm going to lump it into ambient light, but I'm aware that some of it is actually artificial light. And then we revert back to camera settings. And camera settings, essentially, we've got three settings. We've got aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. So let's talk with the easy one first of all. Shutter speed, obviously, I'm sure those of you watch this will know what shutter speed is, but basically it's the speed that the shutter opens and closes at. The longer it's open, the more light it leaves in, the faster it opens and closes, obviously the quicker. We're limited at the top end, which is probably not particularly relevant to this, often by flash sync issues, although using high-speed sync and some of the higher flash sync speeds that we now have available on some of the mirrorless cameras, for example, like the Sony A1, these may well allow us to, but it's not particularly relevant because at the moment we're talking more about situations where there's less light rather than more light. So typically with shutter, we're looking at slowing the shutter speed down. That's one of the criteria that we need to do. Now, how slow can you make your shutter speed? Well, it depends on what you're doing. And most people will find that they can shoot at significantly slower shutter speeds underwater with a properly balanced housing than they could hand holding on land. And the reason for that, of course, is that you can actually the buoyancy of the housing and the port combination and strobes, whatever else attached to it, allows you to be more stable in the water. And of course, that also implies that you, as a diver, need to be more stable in the water as well. So generally, you can reduce shutter speed in order to allow more light in, and that will be something often in cavern, cave, cenote photography, something we do. I'm going to skip on then as well to ISO. And ISO, obviously, more modern cameras. The person that was querying lens choices in the email has a D850, Nikon D850, so a modern, high-performance, high-resolution camera, which is capable of very effective performance, even at very high ISOs. The other thing about ISO is there is lots of really good post-processing ISO tools out there that you can use. So again, if you have the image in some sort of form that's okay, then there's no reason why you can't post-process that up into to reduce the noise in the image. So ISO, we shouldn't be scared of ISO. Certainly, I think in very dark environments, push up ISOs even to things that 6,400. I know Natalie from Under the Jungle often shoots at much higher ISO. So generally, be prepared to push ISO as required. And that introduced the third element, and I kind of haven't really done this in order, but the third element obviously is aperture. Now, the reason I've come to it last is that aperture probably is the one that really is the biggest challenge for us as underwater photographers in very dark environments, cave and cenote photography, for example. The issue is a combination of the requirements of exposure, i.e. how much light we've got, and secondly, the dome port performance. Because if we're using a conventional wide angle setup, then obviously we would be using a dome port, and the dome port itself poses limitations on how far we can increase the size of the aperture. Obviously, bigger aperture, more light in. So, and for those, most of you probably aware of this, but that's a small f number. So f2.8 is a bigger hole than f10, for example. So reality is that we are now caught in a conundrum, because essentially, in order to get decent corner sharpness, and oftentimes in cave and cenote photography, we've got detail in the corners, so we need to show it. Careful framing sometimes can get you around this, and certainly, if we go outside, so we're shooting big animals in the blue, it doesn't matter, it's blue water, you're not going to see any distortion in the corners or softness in the corners. But certainly, once you move into any example where there is detail in the corners, then you've now got a problem of controlling that aperture. The bottom line is that the bigger the aperture, the bigger the f-stop, the smaller the aperture, the better the corners will be, until at some point we end up in diffraction problems. But to be honest, for us, particularly in a limited light environment, this is not going to be the case. So we can also offset this by using bigger domes. And I have an example here. I have a Seacam Superdome. This is my big 9-inch dome. It's a great, big, very beautiful piece of glass, as all these big domes are. Certainly they're wonderful things to own and use. And you can see that it has a relatively small amount of curvature per area. Why is that critical? Well, remember, as we reduce our f-stop, as we make the aperture bigger, we lose depth of field, and ultimately the lens is focusing on a virtual image in front of the dome port, not on the scene. Doesn't focus on the scene, does at the surface. When we go underwater, it's focused so the port itself is acting as a lens, so it's focusing on a virtual image, and that is just in front of the port itself. The bigger the port, the further away it is, but still it's relatively close. And so we're starting to bump into effectively what are depth of field problems in the corners. This is why we get soft corners. We get soft corners because there isn't enough depth of field to present a curved image to the flat sensor. And this is also why with bigger sensors the problem's bigger. So obviously if we're shooting with a full frame camera, this problem is more marked than it is with a crop sensor camera. So the first thing we can do, obviously, to try and mitigate the issues of corners is to use a bigger dome port. And the bottom line is the bigger the better, but obviously at some point you end up in a situation where the dome port becomes unmanageable, particularly possibly in situations like inside cenotes and caves where you've got limited maneuverability. So immediately you start to bump into practical problems of using one. But bottom line is, optically, the bigger the dome port, the better the corners will be. And there is no substitute for that. And that, of course, applies universally no matter what camera system you're using. But the smaller the sensor gets, remember, the more tolerant it is of that softness in the corners. And the reason for that is the smaller the sensor gets, the greater the depth of field the sensor has, apparently. So there's a relationship here between corners, aperture, and dome size. So first option, yes, okay, we can use a big dome port. Lens choices come into this as well, because, and we've spoken quite a lot about this on Wetpixel Live, but it's worth remembering, generally wide angle lenses, particularly rectilinear wide angle lenses, i.e. the ones that we're trying to get to get a rectilinear image, are not designed to focus close. So when a lens designer sets out to design the perfect wide angle lens, they're not looking at how close it can focus. They're looking at how it looks when we're shooting a wide landscape or all the other things that people typically do with ultra wide angle lenses. So of course, what that means is that the lens choices are not really relevant to land photography. So the crucial thing here is whatever your camera system is, I would go back to the Wetpixel forums, have a good look on the Wetpixel forums, search the Wetpixel forums, and find out, because chances are there's someone who's tried your lens combination. I'll give you a good example, which is in Nikon land, which is one I'm familiar with. Nikon have one premium super wide angle lens, which is a 14-24 f2.8. It's a wonderful lens, beautiful lens. In fact, it is an amazing lens. And then they also have a 16-35 f4, which is considered a less premium lens. It's still a very good lens, but it's not as obviously being f4. It's not as good as the f2.8 version. So ironically, for underwater use, the 14-24 pretty much doesn't work. Its corners performance is really poor. It's a beautiful lens, but doesn't work very well underwater. And this is, to be honest, regardless of the size of dome. I suppose at some point you end up in a situation where it would work. But in general, it's not a good choice for underwater use. Whereas the 16-35 f4, so the cheaper lens, relatively speaking, works much better behind a dome port. Now, obviously, we're now looking at mirrorless cameras with new wide angle options coming in and all this kind of stuff. So there is lots and lots of room for testing and trying out here. The only way you will know how a specific lens works behind a dome port underwater is by putting it behind that dome port and shooting it underwater, or someone else doing it. There is no magical formula you can say, well, I'm going to take this lens and put it underwater, it's going to work. It isn't necessarily the case. And some very good land lenses don't perform well underwater, and conversely, some not very good or not particularly brilliant topside lenses do perform very well underwater. So bear in mind, I think the query that I had specifically related to Cenotes was they were querying the use of a 20mm f2.8, which again is a Nikon prime wide angle lens. I shot it a fair bit underwater, and yeah, you can use it. It works with a big dome, 9-inch dome. It does work, but you do need to make sure that you keep that aperture pretty high. So anything much less than f11, f12, you're starting to see the corners starting to get mushy, and obviously that is a problem for us because we have limited ambient light. So this is a compromise. You always are going to be in a situation where you want to basically to be able to open up the aperture, and you can't because of the dome performance. So the Nikon 20mm actually works quite well on the dome port. I used it in the Bahamas, bright sunshine, white sand. Was okay, it's fine, but I was able to maintain a really nice open aperture nice tight closed aperture in order to make sure that I got decent corners. I'm not convinced that it would be a great choice, and certainly I think the 1635 f4 would be a better choice in lower lights, although even that has the same problems. I think you're going to start bumping into problems probably at f10, so you're not gaining a whole bunch by using. And again, bear in mind, those are all depending on the fact that you're using a big dome. If you're using a smaller dome, the problem's going to happen more quickly. So it's a conundrum. Now, one of the other things that was mentioned in the query is the use of fisheye lenses, and I deliberately haven't gone near them yet. And the reason for that is that I've always beheld that my eye works better when I'm looking at straight lines that look straight. And obviously the problem with the fisheye lenses cause distortion. The lens distorts. There's presents a curved looking image, and there's barrel distortion in it. That's what fisheye lenses do. Now, the good news for us as underwater photographers is that barrel distortion tends to hide a lot of the optical problems of using a dome port. So we can get away with using smaller dome ports, for example, with fisheye lenses, and possibly smaller apertures in order to capture scenes. that's definitely the case. It is possible, and certainly in low light, possibly a fisheye is going to be a good option to consider because it um, it will cope with. You can certainly use a smaller f-stop. Now, having said that, with a high resolution full frame camera, you've still got problems. It's not true to say they go away. It's just less obvious. So you'll gain yourself a few stops of exposure latitude. So it is. The optical problems still exist. They're just not as noticeable because of the bendiness of the whole image. Now, this then crosses over into a kind of creative discussion, which I think is an interesting one to have, in that I mentioned at the beginning, I've always been someone that tends to find that if things are meant to look straight, my brain doesn't like it when they're bent. And classic example here, something like a line. If you're a line in the water which goes straight to the surface and you shoot it with fisheye, the line ends up in this big parabola arc, and that doesn't work well. Wrecks tend to be straight lines. Now, caves are interesting because caves actually there's quite a lot of bendiness in caves, and they're not always straight lines. And it's quite interesting that the winning photographer from our the Wetpixel Dive Photo Guide Masters this year shot by a beautiful picture by Thompson Georgia, again in Mexico, and he shot it with a fisheye. And speaking to him about it, one of the reasons he did that is that obviously the fisheye is wider in terms of field of view than anything else. And I think that's a really interesting perspective to take. So, it's worth considering the use of fisheyes in caves rather than being totally against them. And I must admit, I probably tended to fall into that camp. But certainly looking at that image, the distortion is not really noticeable. Now, you can defish them using software. I've never had great results doing that, but you can do it. But certainly, so creatively, maybe consider, and I would say this is probably a good idea, fisheye with a slightly smaller dome may be a creative option. I'm not convinced it replaces your big rectilinear wide angle with a big dome, but it may actually help you to get some interesting creative images. Bear in mind as well that majority of fisheye zoom, so something like the Nikon or the Canon 8-15, this will be using it at the 15mm end. So, and certainly by the time you get it out there, the image is not as barrel distorted as it would be if you were just using it obviously at the 8mm end. It's a circular fisheye, so it's very distorted. So, yeah. Okay. And the last thing, and I'm not going to go into some great depth because I'm aware this is quite a long session already, but the last option would be water contact optics, and Alex and I have spoken at length about these. The advantage, obviously, in Cenote photography is that we can now shoot at much larger apertures and still maintain good corner sharpness. There is a limit on that, but actually, I've shot the WCP one at f5.6 and less, and actually the corners are okay. So this certainly opens up those doors. They work very well. WCP2 works even better, although obviously, and again, you've got to tighten with the lens you're using. It becomes certainly expensive, certainly bulky and heavy, although actually not a great deal bulky and heavier than a big dome port and a lens, but it is certainly heavier. But I think for the ultimate in corner performance in dark environments, there's no doubt that these types of lenses are amazing performers. People will point out WACP1 is not a true rectilinear lens, and they're correct. There is some distortion, but there's not very much distortion. Certainly WACP2, I think, probably will be defined as being pretty much rectilinear. But again, obviously, it comes with increased weight and bulk and certainly expense. Penalties. So there's no such thing in life as a free lunch. Okay, quite a lot of information now. My apologies for going on quite quickly. I'd like to thank Inon again very much for supporting this episode. We can't make these episodes without support from our sponsors, so thanks very much to Inon again. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to add any comments or suggestions in the comments box to continue this discussion on the forums on Wetpixel, or to drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.